Good morning, attendees. This is one of going on about 2-year series of onshore security webinars. My name is Stel Valavanis. I am CEO of Onshore Security and your host. And I got with me Steve Stark from Remediant. Steve, say hello.
Hello, Steve Stark, head of channels for Remediant. Glad to be here. Thanks, Stel.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you why we love doing these because there's a lot of services, products, out there, whatnot. And, oftentimes what's really missing is having a conversation about what kinds of problems are people facing out there, what kind of, solutions are there to those problems, but more importantly, how these things dovetail with policies and process. And we look for products, services, whatnot, that enable policy enforcement. Remember, onshore security is in the detection space. And the very powerful thing for detection is to know what we're detecting against. In other words, what kinds of activity is there that we can call good or bad, how we can weigh it, map it, whatnot. And we're finding it's only the really mature solutions that do address that. Today, we're going to talk about privileged access management. And we're going to talk about how privileged access management really has been a gap in what I consider policy enforcement. Again, to me, policy enforcement, dotted line straight to detection. So let's go ahead and get into this discussion. We got our first slide up. Oh, there we go. No, there we go. Thank you. All right, let's talk about. Okay, Steve, I'm putting you in the hot seat now. Okay. What's this risk? Now let's talk to our audience. There's a risks of admin access. What's going on there? I've already got passwords. I've already got Active Directory. I've already got good managers, and they're doing their jobs, and they're setting up users. And Microsoft gives me all these great tools. How is this being attacked? What are the risks here that we're not realizing?
Well, I think it goes back years and years and years in our industry, probably decades. There's the trade-off between convenience and security. Mm-hmm. And what has happened in many cases is if I have a problem with my computer or I have a problem with my laptop, I call IT and I want it fixed now. And IT has to get into the system and has to do all the fixes, and it is not very convenient. And so what has happened over time is what we call admin privileged access sprawl, where it's much easier to use Active Directory and the groups in Active Directory just to leave credentials on a device, which means if I have a problem or somebody has a problem and they call into the IT organization, the admins can very quickly get in there and resolve the problem. That's the easy fix. The problem is it leaves it open to hacking. And when we look at ransomware and malware and other ways of getting into an environment, that privileged access really is a highway into the crown jewels of an organization. So it's kind of a foregone conclusion that organizations will be hacked.
What's that method? What's that method that the attacker uses where they leverage access? And once they're in, like I assume we're talking about something, they're in already on a host. They got a foothold in a host because they got a payload got executed or some other way they got into that host. What's it? Give us some idea of like that method so we really understand what the exposure is.
Sure, and it's lateral movement is what it's called. It's a lateral movement attack, and the way it comes about is an individual clicks on the wrong link, introduces malware to their system, and on that system, there's usually local access, there's usually some type of IT access, and what does end up happening is that credential is not only resident on that laptop or the device that's been hacked, but it's on a whole bunch of other devices as well. And that's where vaulting is a little limited, right? You can check out and check in passwords, but when you light up a vaulted credential, it lights up on every device that credential's on. So if you have an admin group that not only covers all the servers, but also covers all the workstations, If I get just that one credential, I'm able to move from that laptop to a server or multiple servers and really hack it. And that's called lateral movement.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the main exposure. So when you talk about SolarWinds, and I know we'll talk about SolarWinds a little bit later, or Colonial Oil as an example, it wasn't the first hack that was really the problem. It was the access that the hacker got, that the criminal got to that privileged credential that allowed him to move laterally throughout the organization and really take advantage of the organization.
Yeah, right. So this is what would be my weaponized. Yeah, this is a normal system function. There's, the way that the Windows networking works is that the, credentials apply to, many different hosts, whatnot. But that means they can persist, on those hosts, and that can be taken advantage of, made into a weapon to get into subsequent hosts, and maybe give itself a stronger foothold.
Well, to add to that a little bit, here's a great example of how that sprawl happens. Somebody might be responsible in a larger company, or they might be in the DC area and responsible for the devices in the DC area. So their credentials on every one of those. They get transferred to New York, they get a promotion, and now they're working on all the devices in New York, but the credential is still sitting, their credentials are still in the DC area, and now they're in the New York area. And then it keeps happening, or it might be more convenient just to add somebody just one time, but it just never gets taken off. And it just sits there, and it's accessible because it's on that device. And if somebody gets the right password and username, they have the keys to the kingdom.
All right. Well, I want to go to the next slide, because I think this is where we're kind of talking about, like, what's that kind of the state of state of things now. So why is it like this? I mean, why didn't Microsoft do? What is Microsoft not doing? That needed to be done here. Why is it like the reasons it's like this right now?
Well, so Active Directory is the key to all of this, and that's how most organizations provide their authorization and allow people to have some control, some security within their environment. Unfortunately, Microsoft really isn't in the business to provide security. They're in the business to provide convenience and to provide tools and ways that you can do your job. And so there is some limitations, and I don't think they foresaw what was going to happen, but to make admin life easier, there's groups within AD that allow you to have multiple people and may never need access, but they're part of a group, and it's just easier. And so what ends up happening is there's a ton of standing privilege. And some of the stats that we've seen in dealing with customers that have over 15,000 devices, what we're finding at Remediant is that there's anywhere from 500 to 700 standing credentials that are sitting on any given device.
Yeah, this is not the wonder thing. I mean, just sitting there. How long? I mean, is it possible for them to exist forever on those devices?
Yeah, because most people don't want to go into Active Directory and clean out the groups and clean out all the devices. It's painful. It's time consuming and it's painful. But 500 to 700 that are just sitting there. And oh, by the way, it's the same 500 to 700 that are on every device, not just the laptop, but they're on the servers. And if you get one of them, you now have access to everything.
Right, with high privileges, with all power to execute, install, access to upper level directories. Okay, the solution is in the next slide. Here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we really advocate is just-in-time access, and that results in zero standing privilege. And the way we do it is Remediant goes in and looks at, using Active Directory, looks at all of the devices that are on a network. It very quickly does this. So we're talking anywhere from 12 to 15,000 devices in 25 to 30 minutes. So if you don't have a handle on Active Directory, that's okay. We actually provide some really good insight into what's going on all the devices. And what our system does, we scan, which is what we just talked about. We then can put it into protect mode, which actually takes all of the standing privilege off, locks every single device down. And then we go into that kind of normal course of business where if somebody does need access, we use multi-factor authentication and a very easy app to provide that access. And it's not access to every single device that credential might be on. It's access to one device for one credential for a set period of time.
For that
Just
set period of time.
Yep.
That's the part I like, just in time. That's the part I like, because it lets you keep clean. It's like, telling your kids to pick up after themselves. It's automatic.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to that convenience piece, that's why standing credentials just sit out there. It's more convenient just to leave them. Remediant takes that away and really makes it easy to use. It's one step. Multi-factor authentication is really important. It really doesn't add much time to the entire process, but it protects you. And that's how we're able to talk about reducing the risk by 99%. So if you eliminate all that standing privilege throughout a network, you're eliminating all that lateral movement and the ability for a criminal to go in and do something they shouldn't be doing.
Right.
And that's external as well as internal, because in many cases there are internal problems. There might be a disgruntled employee who's trying to do something as well. It's all stopped.
I mean, see, to me, you guys didn't really like invent some like amazing new kind of process. You can't get more same old than manage your users, give them the right privileges, turn them off when you don't need them. I mean, it's just like, this is 101 security policy, right? What did Remediant do? Remediant says like, and it's a pain in the butt. So how do I make this like foolproof? How do I make it easy? How do I make it so that there's no reason for an admin to kind of like skirt around it? I used to have this great slide about the firewall, like users like, digging their under it and putting ladders over the firewall as like, a metaphor, whatever. It's the admins who are actually doing that too,
Yeah.
They're circumventing good policy. And I get it. I mean, I get it. They're coming from a world of keeping the lights on. That's the infrastructure world. And why I often argue, like, you got to have even small organizations have a separate silo for security versus infrastructure to kind of culturally, mitigate against, that instinct, But here you go, give them a tool that you can encourage, right? And by the way, it's policy enforcement, but it's compliance, because I've got a log now. I know I can say, hey, we've not had a single credential sitting around for longer than this, because our policy says you never have credential this, and because we have a system to enforce it that logs it. So, this gives me that visibility. Now you tie right into GRC and you start notching up to level 4 and 5 in your security maturity instead of like 3 where most organizations ride. I love it.
Yeah. Well, now, and I think to add to that, we're also tied into EDR and PAM and SIMs. So all of that transactional stuff is being moved around, and you can manage it through tools that are already there. We're purpose built to stop lateral movement. That's what we do. And we, through APIs, interact with a whole bunch of other solutions as well. And I think that's when you talk about that session capture and really being able to see what's happening, we provide that insight, particularly when we're tied in with some of those other ones.
Yeah, my part of my job is to study the market all the time, and what is out there, what are people doing, whatnot, and there's just like this big bright line between the tools that are kind of standalone and ones that really integrate and give you data. We're going to get into that a bit later too. That's kind of like a kind of a topic on its own. But I want you to kind of throw in the where's the beef thing here now. Okay, the next topic, Josh, you flip the slide. The next one is like, okay, all right. Great. That's nice that I can audit, and that's nice. You're doing it. You're helping my policy, but okay. So I do this better. I do my management of my credentials better. Whatnot. How does it actually stop something like SolarWinds? I mean, what happened? And SolarWinds getting a lot of attention, rightfully, is the truth. But let's face it, lateral access is the payload that's typically out there. So tell us, what are you doing to, how does this actually stop? How would it have stopped SolarWinds?
Oh, that's a great question. And let me talk a couple of stats to just talk about how big this is, and certainly what SolarWinds experienced. About 74% of all breaches that have been captured by Verizon, there's a report that Verizon puts out that talks about breaches. 74% of them had lateral movement, just exactly what we're talking about, using privileged access to move around. The average cost to a breach is $3.86 million. And this is for bigger companies, but it's a massive problem. And the other thing that's really interesting that I find fascinating is that The average time to detect and then shut down a hack is 280 days. So what you have is a situation where somebody has clicked on the wrong link. Somebody has then put malware onto that device and is just sitting there waiting for 280 days. And they're very patient. The hackers, the criminals that are out there are very patient, and they're just waiting. And that's exactly what happened in the SolarWinds case, where they did not know they'd been hacked. They kind of went about the normal course of business. The hackers got a hold of a credential, a privileged credential, and they were able to go throughout the entire environment and then attack everything. And if they had shut it down, interestingly enough, one of the concerns that I have when I get an email is somebody will send me a link in that email. And you don't know nowadays, if you click on that link, am I downloading some type of malware? Is it really just going to a video? With Remediant and what we're trying to do from the privileged access management piece, you wouldn't have to worry about that, because your lab type might be infected, but the rest of the organization will never be touched. And I think that's really the key, is that they may get into the castle walls, but every door in the castle is locked. You can't get into it. And the castellan's walking around with the keys, and he's going to give you 10 minutes to go into that room and see what's in there. So that's the main thing here, is that we absolutely acknowledge, and I think everybody on this call probably acknowledges, that people are going to get hacked. We fall for some of the dumbest things in the world in an email. It's going to happen. It's what happens after that. And that's what happened in SolarWinds' case. Somebody did exactly what we talked about, and they didn't have the protection to limit that lateral movement. And that lateral movement cost them millions, and a lot of customers as well.
And it is the most common method of expanding once they got footholds in. I appreciate that, and with all the other tools in place, I just feel like Microsoft themselves has been somewhat remiss in not realizing how much that's being taken advantage of, and how much it has to do with how they're set up. We have a question actually that and you could see it probably in the Q&A, Jonathan, I think is appropriate to answer right now. That is, I think is pretty related. The question is, if a company starts up on Azure AD and does not start up hybrid AD, then does the company have only just-in-time credentials? And I'll let you answer it.
That's a good question. So I'll tell you a couple things. First of all, not a technical guy. Second thing I'll say is that right now we don't do the Azure AD. It's all straight hybrid or AD in general. Later on in this year, we will have the ability to do Azure AD. So my answer to that is, right now, that just-in-time credential probably will not work with the Azure AD. So I hope that answers the question. There may be a deeper question there that's more Active Directory than I can answer.
Well, yeah. Well, let me add to that a bit too. Yeah. So no. The answer is no. You don't magically get just-in-time credentials because it's Azure AD. You still need to manage your credentials well. And I'm sure Microsoft has their reasons for making those decisions too. To be honest with you, I don't want to just totally throw them under the bus. So yeah, so let's hope Remediant can create an Azure AD standalone instead of requiring a hybrid environment to function. That's a good thing to consider on the roadmap.
It is, and it is on the roadmap. So
okay, good. Thank you. That's actually the more valuable answer. All right, so let me let's talk a little bit about what are the kind of like reporting capability, the visibility that we get with Remediant. That's just that we're doing that continuous discovery.
Well, we talked about the discovery, right? We scan, takes about 25 to 30 minutes to scan anywhere from 12 to 15,000 devices, and we've done very large ones, over 150,000 devices. So it scales very well. First identifying it and then locking it down is one thing, but the continuous discovery is the piece that's really important, because Stell, you mentioned taking a ladder, IT taking a ladder and trying to go over the firewall or go around the firewall. And the same thing happens with credentials. what ends up happening is it's convenient for me to add Bob to this one device because he needs to go do something. So I'm going to just add him, and I'll remember to take him off, but then that never happens. We continue, once the system's in place and it's put into its continuous discovery mode, it continues to scan every 5-10 seconds, does the whole thing. And so any new credential that comes on is immediately put into zero standing privilege. So the protection stays there. It's not a one-time, hey, let's hope we got it all. It's almost a set it and forget it, right? It's going to continue to do it. And what's important on this, again, the reason that somebody would go and add Bob very quickly is it was convenient. I needed to have Bob get on there, and I want to do it quickly. The way the Remediant system is built is it's application that can reside on a desktop, or the application can be on your phone. It can be set up so that somebody can automatically ask for it using that multi-factor authentication, get access almost instantly. So that continuous discovery, plus the fact that it's very convenient to use, keeps that protection level, that 99% protection level, right up there. And that's the important piece. Is we absolutely recognize that being in IT is tough. You get phone calls every day. I know it happens every single day because I'm part of the problem too. Hey, my thing is not working. Zoom is not working. iCloud's not working. It happens every day. And for the IT folks who don't have a lot of time and maybe don't have the resources, the quick fix sometimes is the best way to go, but that's not very secure. And the continuous discovery that we have and the way that we have the methodology set up really allows that convenience and that security.
Right. No, I know. And I love, I think it's missing from a lot of, let's say, kind of layered, management solutions, this, kind of hygiene and a compliant, auditably, they're secure by, tracking very granular activity, and, on top of, the automation that we talked about before. I think it's very valuable. I think that some of the other companies that are, trying to improve access management in various ways are remiss on, to me, a security minded thing. I think they're still thinking, management and infrastructure. So Remediant's kind of coming ground up with that security mindset. Well, let's talk about the now how that dovetails full on to a more active side of security. Talk to us about how, what kind of that visibility, how that visibility now helps us for detection as well. What are the kinds of things that Remediant reports on, alerts on, logs, whatnot, that will help people like onshore from a detection side. That's my job, is to shorten that 280-day whatever dwell time window. Remediant in a way increases the dwell time window, because like damn it, they got me blocked here too, and so you're taking longer if they're in there, right? I want to reduce that dwell time. So tell me, what data am I getting? What's helping me detect?
No, it's good. Another great question. So it's very tough to see that somebody is in there. As we talked about, the 280 days of just sitting there, and they're kind of lurking, just waiting. What we've done, we've actually built some great integration with Carbon Black and CrowdStrike, which I think goes to this. So you talk about session capture. We're doing what we call intelligent session capture. And so we're able to follow somebody when they do get that credential lit up for that device. And we can tie it into the EDR systems and actually throw alerts on that say, hey, somebody's going in here, and they may or may not be allowed to do it. But where it becomes really important, and I think this is one of the things that you're going to get hacked from the outside. I think people forget that a lot of hacks take place from the inside as well.
Okay.
And that's where what we do really ties in. When it's tied with that EDR system, that intelligent session capture really allows somebody to look and see, hey, somebody keeps going to these servers and they're really not supposed to be. And we can throw alerts on that start to inform the organization, the security team, hey, something is not right here. I think that's where it gets neat, right? Where we're able to take advantage of existing legacy applications that are in there and really provide more proactive. Because when you talk about session capture, that's typically after the fact. That's typically, hey, something happened, let's review what happened. What we're talking about is, hey, we're going to see some really interesting behavior, and we're going to throw alerts on that. We're going to indicate something's going on so that you can get ahead of it now and not afterwards.
And you already have, on the, we're on the battlefield, integration with, you said Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, and I assume pretty easy to integrate with most SIMs as well. Like to get,
absolutely right. Yeah, SentinelOne.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Yeah. We currently are on the EDR side, we integrate with Cortex XDR and Carbon Black, and we love that telemetry we get. But it's you need to tune it, and to tune it for things like attempt at different finding credentials and whatnot. Those are not as clear tripwires. When you get a layer like Remediant in there, now you can the tripwires are clearer because Remediant's managing those credentials everywhere and knows when these things are against a policy or whatnot. It's almost like you kind of like have some easy way to write policy as well as enforce it, or even better, like you're more willing to have narrower, tighter policy because it's not inconvenient to do so. And so now you create this like whatever tighter tripwire, what are you going to call it? I love it. Let's close with with my commercial. So Josh, you flip to the last slide, and it's this is exactly where we dovetail. Onshore security is a primarily an MDR, managed detection response company, with our platform, the Panoptic Cyber Defense platform, and the Panoptic sensor. And we are full telemetry, and we absolutely love offerings out there, products and services like Remediant, that give us very rich data. I would rather get more data and figure out smart ways to parse it and correlate it than try to kind of dumb it down and leave the protection systems on their own, with their own consoles. This is an ecosystem we have to develop in every one of these customers. So we will remain open for any other questions. Thank you to Jonathan for posing that question. Is there anybody else who has out there? Oh, think. Okay. All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, then we will wrap up and say have a good day to everybody and call it. Thank you.
Thanks, Del. It was a pleasure.
Welcome.